So let's talk about censure. It's one of those political terms we hear every now and then, but honestly, how many of us truly understand what it means or why it matters? Censure, in its simplest form, is like an official slap on the wrist, a formal statement of disapproval issued by a legislative body. But it's not just a mild reprimand. You know, historically, censure has carried some significant weight. Take, for example, the case of Senator Joseph McCarthy back in 1954. He was censured for his abusive conduct during those infamous anti-communist hearings. That censure didn't remove him from office, but it did drown his political career in, well, a sea of controversy. Fast forward to 2010, and you have Representative Charlie Rangel censured over ethics violations. Again, not expelled, but his credibility pretty much shredded after that. This brings us to an interesting distinction. Censure isn't the same as expulsion, where a member is actually kicked out, or impeachment, which is a whole different beast aimed at removing individuals from executive or judicial office. Censure falls somewhere in between, a way to express collective disapproval without going to the extreme of removal. It's, I guess, a kind of middle ground, though its impact can still be deeply consequential. But let's ask ourselves, and this might be the real question here, does censure actually uphold the dignity and decorum of a legislative body like Congress? Or does it sometimes become a tool to suppress dissent or even political speech? History has shown us both sides of that argument. I mean, look at Al Green's case. There are those who view his censure as a necessary response to disruption, but others see it as an attempt to silence someone standing up for their beliefs. It's, well, kind of a tightrope, don't you think? Take a look at the congressional address where Al Green was escorted out of the meeting. Play this clip.
That's your warning. Mr. Green, take your seat. Take your seat, sir. Take your seat. Finding that members continue to engage in willful and concerted disruption of proper decorum, the chair now directs the sergeant-at-arms to restore order. Remove this.
Thing is, censure doesn't just stay on paper. It's on record. It follows that individual's legacy, casting a shadow over everything else they do in office. For some, it's just symbolic. For others, it's a mark they never quite recover from. In any case, the use of censure raises questions we have to think about. It's not just about this one motion in Congress. It's about the balance of accountability versus freedom, and the larger implications for how we govern and debate. There's a lot to unpack here, and honestly, no easy answers. The chamber is packed, all eyes on President Donald Trump as he delivers one of the most significant addresses of his presidency, a joint session of Congress. And then, out of nowhere, Al Green interrupts. The disruption, well, it was loud enough to stop everyone in their tracks. Some reports called it a protest. Others described it as chaos. Either way, the moment left its mark. Now Green, a Houston Democrat, later defended his actions, saying his outburst was driven by the need to challenge what he called inaccuracies and falsehoods in Trump's address. He argued that speaking up right then, right there, was the only way to hold the president accountable. But of course, not everyone saw it that way. Many in Congress, especially across the aisle, were quick to criticize, pointing to a breach of decorum. After all, the joint session is supposed to be, well, sacred ground, where conduct and tradition have always been, let's say, non-negotiable. Here's where it gets interesting, though. The censure vote that followed wasn't just a procedural slap on the wrist. It became a clear snapshot of just how divided Congress had become. Republicans largely backed the motion, framing the act as necessary to preserve order and respect in the chamber. But Democrats, many of them saw it as an unfair response to someone daring to voice dissent against a polarizing president. And let's not ignore the timing here. This wasn't just about one moment of protest. It was happening against the backdrop of escalating political tensions nationwide. Trump's presidency had already deepened partisan divides, and incidents like this seemed to push both sides even further apart. The censure vote, in that sense, became more than a reaction. It was a reflection of the broader battle lines being drawn in American politics. You have to wonder, were lawmakers really debating decorum, or were they just using this as another way to fire shots across the aisle? It's a moment packed with layers. Green's act of protest, the subsequent reactions, and the vote itself, none of it exists in a vacuum. It all ties back to these bigger questions about how we communicate, how we dissent, and maybe most importantly, how we navigate an increasingly polarized political stage. Protest has always been, well, essential to the American political story. From the Boston Tea Party to the Civil Rights Movement, disruptive acts of dissent have often forced us to confront uncomfortable truths. And let's be honest, sometimes that's the only way change ever happens. But here's the thing. When lawmakers, the very people who shape the rules, take up the mantle of protest, it raises some really complicated questions. Congress has these established standards of conduct, right? They're there to ensure debates stay respectful, focused, and productive, or at least that's the intent. But where do we draw the line between maintaining decorum and stifling free expression? I mean, if lawmakers can't use their platform to call out what they see as injustices, who can? During Trump's joint address, for example, several Democratic members of Congress staged their own protests. Some walked out. Others quietly held up signs as a form of resistance. These weren't random acts. They were planned demonstrations aimed at pushing back against what they viewed as harmful rhetoric and policies. And yeah, not everyone agreed with their methods. Critics quickly labeled the actions as disrespectful, maybe even juvenile. But supporters argued that these displays weren't just about making noise. They were about making a statement, one that couldn't be ignored. To be fair, critics should also recall that Republicans displayed similar disrespectful acts when former President Obama addressed Congress in a joint session. One key Republican in this matter was Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene was not given a censure for her disrespectful acts against former President Obama or escorted out of the meeting. So here we are, grappling with this balance of power and principle. Is a protest like Al Green's justified when viewed through the lens of democracy, or does it undermine the very structure that's supposed to protect democratic values? It's messy, no doubt about that. But I think maybe the messiness is part of the equation. Democracy isn't supposed to be neat and tidy. It's supposed to be dynamic, uncomfortable, even chaotic at times. And honestly, that brings us back to what this all means today. Debate, dissent, disruption. They're not just relics of history. They're living, breathing parts of how we challenge systems, hold leaders accountable, and ultimately push progress forward. But we also have to ask, when does dissent cross a line? And who gets to decide where that line is? And that, my friends, wraps up today's episode of The Real 411. I want to pause here and just say how much I deeply appreciate each and every one of you who takes the time to tune in and not just listen, but really think alongside me about these issues. Your commitment to staying informed, it's what keeps this show alive. Now, if you found value in today's conversation, here's what you can do to stay connected. Drop a comment, follow us on all the social platforms, and let me know, what topics do you want us to tackle next? Got something on your mind? Send it my way. This is a collaborative space after all. Also, don't forget to sign up for our email newsletter. We're working hard to make sure you never miss an update, an exclusive story, or, well, those behind-the-scenes insights you won't get anywhere else. It's free, it's fast, and honestly, it's one of the best ways to stay plugged into The Real 411. You can sign up right now. It takes like 10 seconds, maybe less. And here's one more thing. If you believe in the importance of independent media that digs deeper and isn't afraid to uncover the nuance in these big stories, please consider supporting us. We've got a presence on Substack and Fanbase with both free and paid subscription options. Your support, even just a little, is what allows us to continue producing content that informs, empowers, and sparks real conversation. Truly, it means the world to me. So, here's my final thought for today. Just remember, the story is never, ever just the headline. There's always more context, more layers, more truth to uncover. That's what we're here for. Until next time, stay informed, stay bold, and above all else, stay real.